Accessing archive. Authorizing. Access granted. Accessing file.
Start off and say I'm a big fan of your art, a big fan of your music. I have been for...
Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Ever since I first saw these really cartoony, psychedelic looking twisty trees over like beautiful snowy mountain ranges. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah, for sure. That's a bit of an older one from like 2012, but yeah, that one was a kind of a slightly different style too, but...
It was. I felt that the style was characteristic of a psilocybin experience that I personally have.
Oh yeah, cool.
I was like, oh, he's been there. He's been where I've been. You know what I mean?
Nice. Yeah, I get that a lot for sure with my art.
I have noticed a gradual progression in how, you know, you're presenting these scenes. So I'd love to get into like, how did you start painting? How old were you?
Oh, I've been doing art since I was really young. I've gravitated towards it for sure. All my childhood, teen years, I was always into art classes, things like that. The psychedelic art didn't really start to come in until around 2004, when I had some deep, like, awakening experiences with psychedelics that really guided me in the direction of like, all right, you're going to do this now. Yeah, and then it was just a natural unfolding to keep going with it ever since then.
So how old were you when you started having these awakening experiences?
I guess 22.
Do you mind sharing like what this initial experience was for you and how it affected you?
So I kind of dove into psychedelics when I was a teenager, like probably like grade 9. And it was more like what you'd call recreational, I guess. And so I had experimented with just like mushrooms and LSD when I was a teenager, but it was just, like partying, or it didn't really become intentional until I was around probably like later teens. But when I was 22, I specifically had an experience with Tool. So it's funny you said Tool introduced you, because also my friend was like, man, we need to specifically like do 3 hits of acid and listen to these Tool albums on repeat. And I was like, okay. And I was actually pretty new to Tool at the time. And we did that, and we had a couple sessions. We had one, and we were just drawing this picture, and I realized that, like, I was like, all right, well, let's just put this big sheet of poster paper out. And it just intuitionally came to me, like, just put it out on the table with some markers and see what happens. And so we put on these albums, and I think it was like Undertow, Anima, and Lateralis. And
oh wow!
And then what happened to me is I realized I was like drawing the sound, and my hand was moving sort of in this like automatic way, and I was just like drawing sound. It was just coming out through my arm, and it was like squiggles. Like anyone looking at it after is like, wow, that looks like a mess. But to us, you know, we were seeing, and he was drawing on another side, and we would turn it, and it was just like the most amazing like Escher picture you'd ever seen, right? Like every little thing became worlds within worlds, and it just meant so much while we were doing it. And that opened me up in this way. And then I did a painting. I had this old canvas sitting around that I didn't like, and I just decided, I'm going to paint black over it. And then I decided to do a solo intentional session, and I just had like one tab and put out some paints, and I had this magazine of like cosmic imagery. For some reason I was like, oh cool, I'm just going to put this beside me. And then it just inspired this painting that was this sort of like, I called it Astral Projection, and there was this cosmic imagery of some dude sort of projecting into this tunnel. And I had actually never really seen what I would call visionary art before, nothing that I could associate with visionary art. And I hadn't even actually seen the Lateralis album cover at that point. My friend had just brought over some like burned copies that we put in the CD player. And the only thing I knew of psychedelic art before was sort of just like fractals and trippy things like that.
Stuff in the head shop, you know.
Yeah, at least that I would associate with that. I mean, I'm sure I'd seen other kinds of spiritual art. But anyway, so it was kind of a unique experience to me. And then this painting came out, and it was like these fluorescent glowing colors. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. And, you know, this whole new experience. And then it was shortly after that my friend showed me Alex Gray's website, and I was like, oh my God, there's someone else who paints like this. Yeah. And then he showed me the Tool cover, and I was like, what the fuck? You know, like, this is incredible. My mind was blown, and I was going to go on this trip to Brazil to do ayahuasca with Alex and a group of people. And, you know, I applied, I was in, but I couldn't get my visa. I was like 1 day short of being able to get my visa. And they were like, oh, it just might not work out this time. And so I intuitionally had this insight that was like, okay, you're just going to stay home and dose during the week that they're down in the Amazon. And maybe you'll like, I had done other psychedelics like San Pedro and stuff. And I'd traveled to South America before this, and I didn't do ayahuasca because it just didn't come. I wasn't seeking it out, and it didn't come to me, but I ended up doing San Pedro down there anyway. And so I was like, you know, I heard you can like astral project and connect with people in these astral planes. And so I didn't tell my friend my intention as far as like, maybe we're going to connect with this group of people in the astral planes if we dose. I just had that in my heart and mind. And I'm like, hey man, why don't you come over and we'll do another session? So he comes over, we dose, we get out some art tools, we're listening to Tool.
Right.
And as we start to peak, we're noticing this jewel-like fabric that's on everything. We're having this simultaneous experience and describing it to each other, and then looking over at my painting, Astral Projection, that's on the wall of this cosmic tunnel. And as I'm breathing out, the tunnel's like flexing open, inviting us in. And then I felt this overwhelming sensation to sit down and close my eyes. And right when I did that, I felt this burst of my third eye, like it was like a muscle that had never been used, had just like opened up. And then I left my body and was traveling through these electric fiery tunnels that were lined with eyeballs, and each eyeball was like a portal to another place in the universe. And I kind of felt at this point like I was being pulled through these places, but it was very familiar and felt good. I wasn't in fear or anything. And then I noticed that then all of a sudden my eyes crack open a bit, and I see these particles bouncing on the sound waves of the music, and they're coming towards me, and I feel them as like these spirits or consciousness of some sort. And then I notice that I'm actually kind of in this other room while I'm in my apartment room at the same time, and I see a circle of people, and then I'm kind of in a body of one of the people in this circle.
Yep.
And I'm like, wow, what, like, okay. And I kind of just had this knowing, this feeling like, oh my God, I'm here. I'm in this room. It kind of had a wooden floor. It was like this yurt thing. I'm like, I guess it happened. I'm in Brazil where these people are doing ayahuasca. God. And I look at my hand and it looks like an Alex Gray painting. And then I look up in the kind of in the middle of the circle, and I see all these spirits flying around, and I identify this one particle of light as my friend Castor that was with me on this journey. And, you know, so to kind of cut it a bit short, then I left my body and had these messages that came to me about what I was supposed to do with art, and that I was going to meet all these other artists that year, like my art brothers and sisters, and there was this sort of mission. And funny enough, a lot of that came true exactly that year. Amazing synchronicities, just one after the other. It was such a profound experience. And, you know, so coming back into my body also, when I was sort of coming out of this cosmic space, my eyes were starting to open again, and I noticed this other light being. And it was sort of this column of light, but it was definitely keyed right into me. And we started having this psychic conversation, and it actually showed me another version of me on another plane of existence, asleep while I was having a human experience. And it was like, it's going to be okay. Like, we got this covered. And then I'm sitting there meditating on this experience, and I also had this incredible, profound heart opening. Kind of like at the beginning of the journey, I had this third eye opening. Well, this was like a next level heart opening where I could feel sort of like the morphic field of my heart encompassing the entire world in the most loving way. It is just incredible. So beautiful, so beautiful. I can just feel the sensations in my heart right now just talking about it, actually. And that might be one of the most important parts of that journey, is the sort of heart opening, the coherence actually with the third eye and the heart, and that embrace and that connection to source energy in that way, while flying through galaxies and meeting light beings is amazing in its own way. I like to remind myself of that deep heart opening and that coherence that happens as a sort of more of an integration point of the human experience, and how we're all connected through this universal love that is source energy.
Wow.
And then sort of coming down from the trip, me and my friends start talking, and we are recounting this experience, and we're like, holy shit, we had like this kind of same experience, except he had his from his perspective. And he even had a moment where he was like, yeah, I was in this room and I was flying around in the air, and I could see you were in a body, and I literally had this defining moment where I felt you and Alex in this space together. So it's kind of one of those weird trips where you have this synchronistic experience that you can't define any other way except that it happened and you both had your version of it. And then things just started to unfold from there, where I actually went to one of Alex's workshop, kind of helped him with we stuck around and painted some of the the primer paint I remember on the first version of Cosm. And then shortly after that, I met all these other visionary artists back in Canada, some of the West Coast crew, and things were just a snowball from there as far as getting into the whole visionary art scene. But that was a super defining experience, and I call that my awakening, and I have a painting about it. And it was so profound, that you can't look back from something like that.
Right. Isn't that incredible that these chemicals are able to carry us through that most profound experience that previous to having it, you do not think is possible? You straight up, like, people could tell you, and you would be like, no way. Like, there's like a 0% chance that is possible. And then it happens to you, and you're transformed. And it's like, okay, well, there's a whole new dimension to my mind now that I, and then not only that, but you feel connected to the other people who are tapped into that dimension of mind as well. And that's why maybe the visionary art community and the psychedelic community and the visionary music community, which is something I like to help cultivate, it is so interconnected, and people are just so like understanding that we're on this path of awakening. It's a spiritual path to create portals for other people, not unlike the portal that invited you in, I see paintings specifically like yours as more than just like this, like, it's such a surface level to look at a painting, to at least at this point in my life, and just think, oh, like they just like to draw, whatever. Like, now I see it as a world you can literally enter, similar to that you said, like there was a painting of a portal on the wall, and you were able to go through it, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah, more or less. Like, we closed our eyes and sort of the portal opened within, but as we were standing in the room, it was like, it was like watching it extend into space. But it is like that, and it was a defining moment where, I hadn't told my friend again about my intention. Like, we had just put out another piece of paper, and this time we had like some watercolors and some markers and stuff when we were painting, but I hadn't told him that, that Alex and the group were doing ayahuasca that week and that maybe we were going to connect astrally with them. And so that kind of thing blows my mind. And the fact that we had a joint experience of that happening, like, you can't scientifically prove it, but you both, it's true. Like, you experienced it, and it's like, you know, and then you find out people have all kinds of similar experiences. Of those like sort of synchronized journeys, but also like traveling through the universal mind lattice type thing. And that is sort of when things become like portals, whether it's the music or the imagery. And there's like a, you know, it's sort of like a, kind of lacking for a word here, but sort of like a time stamp where it's like, people can have their own experience of what you've offered, but also they can tap into your experience sometimes because it's part of the collective experience. Yeah,
exactly. Well, when I started to understand these states of consciousness for the first time, it was so easy to see where all the mystical writings came from the past.
Right.
Even things that I don't necessarily identify with, like, you know, the Bible or Christianity or what's the one, the Vedas, you know, these types of things. Like, I don't follow any particular religion. I just consider myself a spiritual person. And I look for the best in every religion, and stuff to pull from and interconnect all the religions to the primary mystical experience. But it's so weird to think about spirituality and religion prior to these experiences, because there's a point when you just say, oh, so you just have to believe it? Like, even though you have no proof, you've never seen anything about it, you're just supposed to believe it because someone told you, you know?
Yeah.
Well, when you have these experiences under your belt, you say, oh, all that stuff is possible. You know what I mean? It's not that necessarily like maybe the Red Sea was parted, like actually, but that is some spiritual visionary metaphor for an experience a group of people had. You know what I mean? Or something of the sort. I started to see the mysticality in everyday life and able to see art in a new way, able to see clothing in a new way. Like when LSD or any psychedelic starts to hit you, it's so funny that the tiny details you're able to pick up on. Like, I was able to see like every fabric interwoven in my pants, right? And it's like, okay, well, maybe a machine made these pants, but at some point, people were straight up making these as a form of art. And it's like, we wear this. It was such a big deal. It was like, I could see every fiber. It's its own individual piece of material.
Yeah. Or like sort of worlds within worlds. I've had a lot of those experiences where there was another one where me and this guy, and we had some two ladies over, and this was another session. And I remember right when things kicked in, this was a funny moment because you're a Tool fan. So I was like, we put on Undertow, and I was like, oh, I'm pretty sure on like Disgustipated, that's when we're gonna like we're gonna peak, or like, you know, the LSD's gonna kick in, and it totally did. Like, as soon as that like click came on at the beginning of that song, you know, those gears are turning or whatever the sound is, we're all of a sudden looking at each other like, whoa. And I had this pen in my hand, and I brought it down to the paper, and it was like this brush pen, like an ink pen, but it had a brush at the end. And all of a sudden, as it's touching the paper, I can zoom in and see like the droplets coming out of the tip of it onto the paper. And as each droplet of ink is on the paper, it's reflecting us, our whole group, in it. But then there was also an entire world within it. And it's so mind-boggling, like when those things happen where you can see multiple worlds at once. It's like this kind of God vision that you just can't have in normal everyday life. And there's no way to like really quantify it, you know, you can't, but you have it. And tons of people have those experiences, like looking at the fibers on your clothes, and like all of a sudden they turn into the fractals of the universe or something like that. And I love that kind of thing, because it is, it takes kind of a like, you know, a faith to continually sort of believe in and remind yourself that everything are these interconnected fractals upon fractals of interconnected, interwoven geometries that are all one in this weird way that's hard to describe. But then with psychedelics, you kind of get a chance to see it and feel it. And without that, it's a bit, you're sort of a bit in the dark about that kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's so much more special to see things as worlds within worlds in the fractal universe and be able to know because you saw it. Like it's weird. It's like, because pre-seeing it, it's all hearsay, and you're kind of like, I don't understand what all these people are saying. Like you just don't have the hardware for it. But once you have seen it, and that's essentially what a seer is, and that's why I think this is called visionary. That's, I think, where these terms come from, is for all of time people have had access to these experiences, and they've been kind of made taboo. They've been pushed underground. They've been secret and only for a select few people. And nowadays, with the internet, with technology and information at an all-time high, more and more and more people are unlocking and awakening. And it's not like, it's going to happen to you guaranteed. You need to be a particular person in a particular set and setting. I don't think anyone can just drop acid and have that experience you had. I think that a lot of years prior to that were gearing you up, preparing you.
Yeah, for sure. I think everything you just said there, like, as far as like leading into psychedelics too, I had been for years, a handful of years previous, reading different, I guess you could call it spiritual information, whether it was Carlos Castaneda, the Celestion Prophecy, things along those lines. Mutant Message Down Under was an awesome book that opened me up to a lot of things. And like synchronicity too, understanding about synchronicity. The Celestion Prophecy was a book that opened me up to that, and I really started using it in my day-to-day life and being like, what is this? Like, how can I follow up on eye contact, and just being brave to like approach strangers and be like, hey, we made eye contact in this funny way, like maybe we have a message for each other. Like I would just do that around this college campus I was on, and it was awesome. It just led to, and we wouldn't even necessarily become friends or anything. We would just share little messages and be like, whoa, just have these little keys for each other and then be on our way. So things like that, like building into psychedelics and then having these deep experiences. It's like your mind and spirit and body are already changing gears in this way. And I hear what you mean as far as like some people don't have these, like, some people, I've heard of people doing like 30 doses of acid and just still being able to be at a party. Like they might be like not very mobile, but they were there and they were still, doing stuff. Whereas for me, it's like the most I've ever done is 5. And that was one of the weirdest experiences of my life, but it had a lot in it. But even with 3, and then even now, like I can microdose. And sometimes if I'm in the right set and setting, and that includes my body and mind state, I can all of a sudden go kind of astral, like if I allow myself to. So it's sort of just becoming used to these frequencies. And really, like, it's kind of has a lot to do with your intention, aligning your frequency with it. And, my awakening experience kind of showed me that what we understand, in subsequent experiences after, is that I think space and time travel has a lot more to do with like dimensions and leaving our bodies than it does creating physical like rocket ships to go to other planets and things like that. Because a lot of the methods we're using are obviously very destructive and oppressive, and they just have these things to them that are disconnected from this. To me, they appear and seem disconnected to sort of the fractal nature that is connected, that is everything. Obviously they are everything too, so they have their own piece of the puzzle, but sometimes I think it's this weird thing of showing us it's part of our evolution. It's kind of like what's going on in the world right now. You can look at it in all these different ways, and to me, I see that there's this big awakening happening, and it is like a psychedelic journey where, sometimes even on a microdose, you can all of a sudden be like, oh man, you're having to evaluate, parts about yourself. and you're like, oh, I thought I was just going to have like a fun day creating art and doing whatever, but all of a sudden it's like, no, I have to go in. And I think there has to be a willingness to go in too, like you're the type of person, and apparently I am, and there's people that are that want to look at the shadow, so to speak, and like go in and look at what work needs to be done and then be able to integrate that work. Whereas I think if you're going to do like 10 or 30 hits of acid and go party, you might not be changing your frequency to do that work. So
and you're not in a quiet enough place, like if there's a party going on and all this stuff happening around you that's needing you to be aware, versus that, very sacred space and you can hold for yourself or your friends, even if it's just a few people, everyone can be on the same page as far as what we're doing here. We're doing inner work. We're going to do some traveling. We're going to check in. We're going to drop in. We're going to learn. We're going to integrate, and we're going to communicate these things that come up. Because if you do all those things, you become a better version of yourself. You become closer to that higher self that you get a glimpse of on these things, and as well with like deep meditation and all the other spiritual practices that are there. That they show you a height that you can achieve with enough work, with enough self work, creative work, and then just integration work. Because you can have the vision, but if you don't do anything with the vision, it might fade over time. The fact that someone like you're distilling these visions into paintings, into music, you're able to create a archive of experiences and invite others into your experiences, and as well help them have their own. The fact that visionary art is out there and exists, it's almost like it's almost like proof or something that
totally
that the thing that you've seen too, other people see, and helps you not feel maybe so alone in these experiences, and does build community.
Absolutely. I love that you just said that, because I think of that often, and I'm developing a presentation for just that kind of thing, because people always argue, like people that are more like science minded argue with me about things as far as like, well, you need peer reviewed studies to prove that that's true or whatever. And if you can't quantify it, it's not true. And that whole argument. And I'm like, well, we've got a shit ton of visionary art out there, and music and all kinds of things like that, and poetry and written word and all these things about these experiences that science can't measure in any other way. Yet we have this extraordinary, vast, like you said, archive of these portals, of these creative portals and these experiences that show that these things are real, and so many people have these experiences connected to these other realms beyond our physical construct. So it's, to me, absolutely proof. And I love that. I love, telling stories and the details even of my awakening. Sometimes I'm like, oh, maybe it's a bit embarrassing, but really my higher self is like, no, you just have to keep sharing these, because you're leaving seeds for other people's awakening so that they don't feel crazy,
Right.
And who's to say what's what, like what's more crazy than anything else? It just seems to us in our experience that, like you said, what's happening to us is leading us to be better people. So we want to leave things behind. As I love that you say archive, like we want to leave these things behind that point to ways that made us feel better and made us treat the world better and made us treat other people better and things along those lines. So,
but it is a product of the experiences that you've had, and you're able to share and show that there is value to be earned through going through these. Because, if you're just someone who trips all the time and doesn't do anything, like people, it's going to be hard for people to look at that like like an actual, like responsible thing. Whereas, when you're able to produce stuff from these experiences, and it's beautiful the way that your work is and your music is, it's like, whoa, like, maybe I should maybe I should try creating stuff from my experiences instead of just having them, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a big, part of what I love to back and support and help get out there to the world is people who do that, because for
Mm.
me, those were guiding lights and
Mm.
signposts to doing more and more inner work to the point that I'm at, at this moment, and I still have much further to go. But
Mm-hmm.
it is it's such a beautiful thing that's happening that to the human race during this time when we really need it, when the earth is screaming, "Help me,"
Mm-hmm.
and no one's listening.
Mm.
Now the visionaries can point the way through their art, through their music, and I think that's going to go further than some peer-reviewed paper. Thousands and thousands and thousands of people have seen your art, have heard your music, have been affected, and know that they're not alone in their explorations of consciousness. And I think that is such a powerful thing. And there are
Mm-hmm.
communities surrounding that. So I'd love to jump in to these communities that are very much informed, or at least seemingly informed by these experiences. So I understand that you've spent some time with Cosm and you've spent some time with Dom and her.
Mm-hmm.
And what are your kind of takeaways from these communities that their central focus is almost that visionary experience?
Can I tie that in another way? Because as you were
Hmm.
talking there, um, what I felt like is what I've been seeing a lot lately is so you're talking about like these products that come from these experiences,
Hmm.
and what's also happening to us as a collective right now, and what happens on the psychedelic experience. We were talking about integration of your new levels of awareness, and that how that also has to come into a place of being, like how you are to other people
Hmm.
and yourself, and monitoring that, because there's all kinds of people that could create really beautiful epic art and music, but they actually still might be assholes. And in
Hmm.
fact, I do see this happening, where you can also get totally sucked into that part of yourself, and the fame demon can kind of take a hold, and you can override the lessons you've learned as far as the integration of awareness, and all of a sudden be like, I'm this important person and I'm going to tell other people
Hmm.
about ways of being. But what we're seeing in the world right now and lately is that there's all these gurus, like whether they're yoga gurus, different types of leaders. There's all kinds of politicians, science people, you name it. But especially like just recently, there's been different yoga gurus. There's like Bikram yoga,
Yeah.
Yogi
I
Bhajan.
just heard yesterday about Yogi Bhajan. I was so shocked because I've been in numerous Kundalini classes.
Okay. Yeah,
Crazy.
and things along those lines where you're like, "Oh my God, like these people that are these spiritual leaders are actually like assholes, and
Hmm.
like they might be pedophiles or just like womanizers, things like that, or rapists and things like that." And so it's not necessarily always the product too. It's not to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but it's sort of a reminder that I think part of the big awakening is that we're because you're talking about community, and there's all kinds
Right.
of people that join communities, but I see what can happen. And I guess pointing to Dom and her is that people can get attached to dogma and ideas and things that actually take them out of their continual evolution, because you sort of get strapped to certain ideas, or especially with leaders, in the case of
Hmm.
leaders like Dom and her, their leader, in my opinion, was kind of a jerk. Like I was there
Hmm.
for 3 months, and he was dying while I was there. He died 2 weeks before I left.
Oh, wow.
And he wasn't that old. And every Thursday they had these meetings, these community meetings, and we would put these headsets on where they would translate the Italian into English. And he wasn't a nice person to them as he was dying. He was like, "You guys aren't getting it. I came here from 600 years." Like their whole myth is that he came from 600 years in the future to try and save humanity from a destructive timeline. And he was literally saying to them, he's like, "You guys aren't getting it. You're moving too slow. So I'm out of here." Basically, I got cancer or whatever. He wasn't clear about what happened to him, but it looked pretty obvious that he had cancer and he was withering away or something like that.
Right.
And yeah, he's like, "I'm checking out. You guys basically dropped the ball, and so I'm out of here." and and you have these other leaders. And so even when we look to leaders of the world with this whole COVID crisis, is there's so much insane corruption. It's like the higher up you go, the more the more greedy and psychopathic people get. And then when you talk about peer-reviewed science and stuff, it's like, well, we can easily look at peer-reviewed science and see how corrupt it can become. And so what's happening is, I think we're finding, there's so much confusion right now about statistics, and people are waking up to all kinds of, you could say, conspiracy theories, and things are just all over the place. So what's happening is, I think people are trying to find their individual power, and we're coming back into ourselves because we've lost touch. We've given away so much power. And I think this has happened over thousands of years, is that there's been these groups of people that have realized how to take control of populations and people. And it's largely been through religion. And in the past 100 years, it sort of stepped outside of religion into more of commercialization, but the commercialization became the religion through like pop culture and things like that.
Right.
And people have just given away so much power to authority figures. So whether it's, in groups and cults and society. And so we're coming back into our own power. And I feel like that's I'm just really excited about thinking about that right now.
100%. So in some of these communities, the figurehead is able to detract from the actual experience of going inward yourself. So what would you say is a ideal community,
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, as far as my experience at Cosm, I haven't been there for long periods of time. Like after, when in 2004, when I went to the workshop and, I was helping there for a little bit, painting the primer on the original gallery. And then it was like years later, I guess it was 4 years ago, I went there and did some visuals for Yaima at the newer version of Cosm. I mean, I think Alex and Allison are such wonderful people, and I think that my experience of them is that they are actually really great examples of leadership and community building. They're very, very kind people, and they're so focused on coming from the heart and creating art from the heart. And that's something that people have a heart. You can't deny what those frequencies do to people. And even in science, there's all these like the Heart Math Institute and things that are learning now that it's almost more our heart is doing more of the thinking, or you can move more of the thinking into your heart frequencies. And so, yeah, like that community seems like a really great place to me. I was only there for a couple days, so I don't know how it really operates on a long-term basis.
Right.
But they're, to me, really great examples of kind, sweet people that are trying to embrace a collective, like creative community that isn't based on super strict dogma.
Right.
And then as far as like other communities and what would be ideal, I think that that's something to just always keep in mind, is just not getting too attached to dogma and leadership in these ways that disables people from having their individual experiences and journeys. So we're constantly navigating how do people have their own awakenings, and how do they come to their understandings of life through their own version of lessons that are going to be different from the person's before. And ultimately, I think a big part of it to me has to do with our connection to the earth. I think, the more we connect with nature, the more it sort of humbles us to this where we are, and what we need to do to connect to this place, because we need the earth to survive. It's where we get all our sustenance from. So if we're just constantly disconnecting from it, it doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, I guess I'm wondering, and just on a problem solving / solutions tinge here, like, it's clear that people crave community. They want people around them that understand them, that accept them, that know where they've been, what they're going through, where they want to go. But once a central figure in communities becomes almost idolized, this like power thing starts happening. This like they kind of get out of control. Maybe their ego blows up. They want to be looked at a certain way, like a god or like a like a more than human, we'll just say. And then it all goes downhill. Now, there's other people who are on the spiritual path who will just go in isolation. Let's talk like Tibetan monks, Buddhist monks, certain yogis that'll just venture out into the wilderness and be alone until they find their journey, until they find themselves. So where is like the middle ground? It's like, what would you think is like the ideal situation, at least in your perspective?
Yeah, ideal's a funny word. I don't know. And I'm also trying to figure it out. And I think that's just what's happening as a humanity right now. And I do think that there's a constant navigation of what the middle ground is, but it also might be that there just really is no ideal for everyone.
Yeah.
And I think that's also what we're seeing. Like, I guess for myself, I feel like I love the community where I live, and I feel like with these big power plays that are happening right now in this world crisis, with these sort of authoritarian crackdowns, and these people that have wanted to push through these sort of like one world government type things for years, they've been saying, we want to do this, and we want to track everyone, and we want to make a digital cashless society, and we're going to microchip everyone, and all that kind of crazy shit. It's like, well, how many people actually want that? And there's obviously a lot of people that don't. So how do we actually pull away from that and find our own power in our own communities and start building new resilient communities that care for each other and the earth? And I think it just takes understanding where you are. I mean, I guess, you could travel somewhere. But well, not right now. And that might even be really limited in the near future too. They're talking about these immunity passports and all that. So it's like really part of what's happening. Like, yeah, we're in isolation. We're going through this stage, and you can use it for this time of reflection. Like you're saying, but eventually when we come out of this, it is like an integration after a psychedelic journey. And it's like, well, what did you learn, and what do you want to do? Like if you saw this darkness happening of this authoritarian police state, that's sort of like the dark shadow of your psychedelic journey. And so how do you want to transform that? And I think it really is up to us to be creative and find ways of connecting with our especially most immediate community. Because, it's like even your neighbors, like I'm walking, right away when this was happening, we were walking, checking over to our like older neighbors and some of our other neighbors, and because that's where you are. And, what I've noticed too in the festival culture, that's a whole other sort of, I could call it sort of like culty type thing on its own, where I think the fame demon runs rampant, and people have been sort of taken over by the whole pop culture thing, the partying, stay young forever and party forever kind of thing. And people like wanting to be famous, it does weird things to you where you basically aggressively will ruin your relationships with people that are actually close and important in your life in order to become famous and successful. So how do we integrate with our most immediate communities, knowing that's where you are in the world? And how do you build resiliency that's connected to your community and the earth? And so, I mean, I think a lot of it to me, again, has to do with gardening. I have a big garden here, and it's a super big gardening community, actually, where I live. And awesome. I think that's sort of a starting point for people, is although that's sort of in your own space, you can, like, we have a local Facebook group for the Roberts Creek Sunshine Coast Farm and Garden community, and you can talk there. And so those are ways of connecting with people that don't, you don't see a lot of arguments happening. It's sort of just sharing of positive information on resiliency. Right. And then there's things like, possibly creating your own currency or whatever. Dom and Her did try to do that. Well, I guess they technically did do it. But then, of course, they had to integrate with the euro because they have all these people coming in and out. But yeah, I think as far as ideal, it's tricky. And we're figuring that out because we've been so programmed in this system and so sort of addicted to the system that we're in. And it's sort of like we're looking at these, these political figures and leaders as parents. It's like a Stockholm syndrome, this like corrupted relationship where we know we're being abused by them, but we still need their support. And so in an abusive, traumatic relationship, you have to find a way to step out of it and find your own power again. And that's, finding, often it's through a type of spirituality, and connecting with other like-minded people and communities. So it's just a step-by-step process of really becoming aware of what you want and working towards it step by step, one foot in front of the other. All right, I don't have a whole place for a big garden. I'm going to plant a few pots on my deck, or just some things in my house, or maybe I'm going to start a painting or some music, or, having tea with my neighbors. I don't know.
Absolutely. I think that's a really interesting thing to do during especially a time like this. But if you have a garden, you have something to do. You have a garden to tend to. You have a community of people you might catch out also tending the garden. Then a conversation happens, then value happens. That's what you're doing. It's not just this kind of twiddling your thumbs with, plugged into the matrix chair that is Uber drop-offs and, what's the other eating thing that they lift, or not lift, what's it called? That there's another thing
I don't know. I don't have any of that shit where I live. So
well, see, that's what I'm saying, is it's probably a good thing, because it lends itself to just this over consumer lifestyle instead of actually producing. You're producing plants, you're producing vegetables, you're producing fruits, you're producing community and conversations, and also opportunities to get out in the sun, get some vitamin D. That's going to boost your immune system. You know what I mean? So all these people locked away in their houses, afraid to go outside, lowering their immune system. I just think that's a really beautiful way to fill your time and also live a good life and live a life closer to nature, is to have a garden. So, I mean, this is a solid push for me to really consider something like that. And as far as like community goes, I think that there might be just the right size of community. I think what happens is, this is just my speculation, I don't know for sure, but I think what happens is once there becomes a certain size of community, other people want to get involved just because they see the size, and they say, oh, something must be going on here. I must be missing out on something. But they may not even resonate with that community. They're just kind of like latching on to this popular thing that happens. And then when, droves and droves of people are showing up and the guy's kind of getting an ego about it, because everyone, wants to listen to him and see him and hear him and hear him speak and all of this type of stuff, that's when it's a slippery slope once you get to that place as a human, because I think there's a certain size. I think you should keep it small and intimate, and kind of know when to say no about new people showing up. And it's weird because you're like, well, you want to be accepting, but like at the same time, if it gets too big, that's to the group's own detriment. You know what I mean? It's weird.
Yeah, that's a really fascinating one. And I know when they started Dom and Her, that they were trying to keep it, I think it was like around 250 people. Like their leader Falco had an idea that communities above that size start to sort of disintegrate and become corrupt, but they kept expanding. And I mean, I don't know at what point his like my perception of him is that he was some kind of psychic being. He was tuned into psychic energy, and he was a spiritual being. And I think almost from the get-go, he realized he could manipulate people. Like when I hear of the story and I talk to some of the original members, and that happened in the 70s with other cults where they were like, implants from the CIA to experiment with groups of people like Jonestown and things like that. And, and his tactics, even like Falco from Dom and Her, his tactics, some of their community tactics are military based, and how they form these trauma bonds between the new people and the elders and things like that. It's really fascinating. And so part of me is like, oh, did he come from like a military background or what's going on? But kind of tangenting, but where it's just, man, I'm so fascinated with where we're at right now, because it's what a critical time. Like, it's funny when you say the words matrix. This is kind of a potential spiral, so I don't know if you want to keep talking, but
let's keep going, baby.
Okay, because I'm super fascinated by this, and it's sort of like, what some people consider darker, but it's like the journey is partly seeing the shadow. So I think what's happening right now, and the way I experience it, and I know lots of other people do too, is that we're sort of looking at what could be the early stages of the Matrix, like in the movie. Like, we have all these technologies where there's going to be more VR. There's going to be more ways to just plug into the system and stay in your home. Like, it's almost like they're prepping us. Just stay in your home. That nature is dangerous. Like going outside is apparently dangerous. Touching money and other people are dangerous. Like, it's like this program where nature is so scary and things are scary, and stay inside and we'll deliver everything to you with robots,
right?
And just plug into VR and augmented reality and all these things, and we'll totally take care of you. And then you have things like Elon Musk's like Neuralink, like no, like he's like, I'm afraid of AI intelligence taking over, so how about I build a system that attaches to your brain that's also connected to my AI Starlink system? Like, wait a second, what? You want us to connect our brains to basically Skynet, from Terminator? It's like, what the sorry, man, I'm out on that. Like in a Star Trek-y kind of way, it could be cool, but I don't like it, and it feels really disconnected from
Not
nature. And they even have, like, what is it? Someone was just reading to me, there's this, apparently, I haven't looked up the patent, but Microsoft has this patent where they have like something you can put on your body that monitors your body movements, and it basically takes your body's like heat signature and things and gives you digital currency based on like what you're doing. So it's kind of like this social credit system thing that, like, your own activities mine cryptocurrency for you. and it's also based on apparently like what advertisements you're looking at, like what websites are you looking at. So it's this total program, which to me is like, oh my God, that's like, isn't that kind of how people got drawn into the Matrix, is this whole AI reality? And so I feel like there is this wave of this red and blue pill thing happening where we're almost making a choice. It's like, well, which way do you want to go? And I don't want to totally look at it in black and white terms, because I feel like technology offers us so many great things, but I feel like we are really kind of having to evaluate like where we want to go with it, because I don't want to be stuck in my home just having robots deliver things and plugged into VR for the rest of my life. That just does not feel good to me. I'd rather be dead. I don't fear death in the same way. Like that seems scarier to me than just dying from a virus or something,
And maybe that's why the psychedelics, the plants, are infiltrating, our consciousness and showing us what is actually important, because it's where we come from. Like they're trying to show us, at least in my experiences, what you are and where you came from. And what you are and where you came from is a world of plants. This is their world. Like you're the visitor in the plants world. You know what I mean? It's not the humans world and the plants are ours. It's the reverse. We're the plants. So, in the way that, you have a parent that tells you what to do, the plants are the parent of humanity. They tell you what to do. If you listen, if you open yourself to hear the message, and I think the message from psychedelics are peace, kindness, love. If you're tuning into the right frequencies of them and you're doing the work being asked of you by them, that is the message. And this other thing, the Matrix thing, is consumerism just taken to its like most extreme. It's like, hey, consume. Don't live in the world. Just be in the Matrix, be in the VR, be in the Netflix, be in the game. Like it's way better than the world. But the world is what we are and where we came from and what we're designed to be in. So it's interesting to think that is this evolution carrying us into technology, and it's a natural process, and we're just destined to be these fucking like cybernetic, like like androids or whatever it is. I like that's a whole topic. Or is it to just exist and be, right? Just to be what you are, just be. And what you are is you're an animal amongst trees. And there are things that make this animal happy. There are things that can also detract from that animal's life. If you do those things, have moderation, have balance in your life, also get out in the sun and put your feet in the grass, don't just all day, every day at the computer. And, I'm talking to myself a little bit here and having self-realizations here at the same time, because I have been very wired in. In fact, part of my way of transmuting all this internal inside time has been, hey, let's really get shit done. You know what I mean? So, but that is, in its own thing, a pushing towards something that's other than being. So there's a balance. You know what I mean? Like, what do you think about all that?
Totally, man. I mean, I obviously am also in front of my computer a lot, so I could easily sound like a hypocrite. Like I am totally striving for balance in those regards, because it's like my dedication to the creative process. I love it. I fucking love what abilities my computer offers me to be able to create music and things. And leaving these archives. So you have this Xian archive, and, that is what you're offering. And I think that that's a beautiful thing. And it's, part of our evolution is the communication, so you're leaving these seeds of communication. So whether it's through these podcasts, you have your website to support these artistic offerings, which is so great, man. I love that you do that.
Thank you.
And it's important because it's sort of like, well, it's like the Tool song Schism, it's like celebrating our communication and having these pieces come back together. Like we know the pieces fit, and we're in this stage of seeing how they fit together. And maybe technology, like comes to a place where, like right now, it seems to be a lot of it seems to be guided by greed. And so there's all this planned obsolescence and things like that. And these factories that are, have basically slave labor. It's like you have this supposed philanthropist, Bill Gates, funding the World Health Organization and saying like, I care about everyone in the world. But it's like, well, yeah, did you care about all the factories that were making stuff for your products or whatever? Not really, probably not. Like, and I don't know, I'm just saying this sort of an interesting example to think like, it seems like it's coming from a place of greed. So if we collectively come to more of a place of from the heart and how are things contributing to our resilience and connection to the earth, maybe whole new types of technology will develop that are actually sort of more integrated with our biology, but in a like, or maybe not even our personal biology, but just like sort of like a more biological way, if that makes sense. I don't know. It's kind of far out there, but so I think, I don't know, like part of me thinks like, it's like you said, we're animals in the forest, and I don't know if you've ever read the Ringing Cedars series. You have?
No, I have not.
No. Okay, they're pretty far out there. I've read like a few of them. There's this character, Anastasia, and she comes from this ancient culture in Russia where they were just these humans that lived in the forest. And she says to this guy, like, your ultimate technology is your imagination, and your DNA connects you to source energy. And through your DNA and your imagination, you can have any possible experience and live it as real. And you don't need to create anything in this world in order to have your survival. You just need to, it's sort of like a very, very like fluffy sort of Garden of Eden type view of like, we are meant to be here coexisting with nature, and your imagination is what you have your other experiences through. But she has animals that like bring her food and help care for her baby and things like that. It's very like super idyllic. But and she says that her ancient culture, like they would sing things into reality. If they wanted to have like a collective experience, they had these songs that would like sing things into reality, which I think super beautiful. And, you can use it as this vision to connect with nature. It's just, yeah, it's really, it's hard to say. And I think you're on the track of just recognizing the balance of like, okay, I have this, I'm doing all these things through the computer to support the communication, because you obviously have that gift and it's coming from your heart, to want to build these bridges of communication to support your community that you're building. You are building community, so you're taking the steps to build community for what you see as a better world. And that's how it starts. And that's where I think the momentum we use to keep going forward, and just being able to have moments that recognize our shadow self that is giving into these shadow desires and addictions, and step out of them just one step at a time. Just just keep correcting those things when you recognize them, because it's easy to get sucked back in.
Well, you're someone who has produced a lot of content, like made a lot of paintings, made a lot of albums, done a lot of stuff. It's clear you're used to getting out of your own way, because I think that that's what the creative act is in a little bit. Is it's not necessarily you making this thing, it's something channeled through you when you allow and accept. And there's varying degrees of it. It's like there is certainly technical skill also happening, but as far as that creative force that's able to flow through you, I feel like it takes a certain state of mind for that to occur. So how do you personally, and we're speaking to other creators right now that maybe are having a writer's block, or maybe just can't pick up the brush right now. Like, how do you, create space for the creative act? What things do you say no to? What things do you make sure that you have a routine around?
Yeah, that is important, I think. And for me, it's things like meditation. And I flow through different types of meditation, where sometimes I feel like if I'm sort of bored or stagnant with one, if it becomes too much of a routine. But I am often drawn to like Vipassana meditation, just sitting meditation. Basically, I've gone to a few Vipassanas, and I like that, sort of starting my day often with that, even if it's like 15, 30 minutes to an hour. Sometimes I listen to audio meditations. I've been loving the Wim Hof breath, actually, every morning.
Me too.
Yeah, me and my lady have been doing it, and it's great. Cold showers. We've been getting into these Qigong videos recently before we go to bed, which I'm finding super gentle and grounding, because they're this like awesome, flowy, reconnective thing that's not like, it's not like yoga or working out. It's like this thing that really tunes you into your body and grounds you, and it's like very intentional. So things like that, and of course, just going into nature. So again, like gardening, and then just going for walks, going for bike rides, just being in nature. They're just super important things to reconnect and to that energy and inspire, and they are important. So, and then when it comes to things like, psychedelics, sure, like I've the past handful of years been liking microdosing from time to time. It tends to sometimes reset me, sparks new creativity, and focus. Plant medicines like cannabis. I've been going through breaks of, trying to have breaks too, because it can also become a crutch for sure. Like I've had periods where I'm not usually like a day smoker, but I often like smoke a bit at night. And then if that goes on for months, where like every single night, even if it's just like a toke or something, I'm like, I recognize, oh, okay, this is a thing. Like, this is a crutch. You're doing it every night. Like, sure, you eat food every day, but it's being able to recognize that. So yeah, like it's just finding activities that reconnect you with your spirit and your heart, and recenter and calm, and finding those places of silence, where your creative mind, you're not listening to a podcast, you're not listening to anything, you're just like in a space of silence where whatever, like maybe you'll have a bunch of chaotic thoughts, but it also gives space for inspirational thoughts.
Absolutely. Love it. So more or less, you're saying like grounding activities, things that bring you back into the present moment, are a daily thing for you, and then that kind of helps you show up in that mind frame to go ahead and create and use your ability to, to the best of your ability.
For sure. Yeah.
Love that. Love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Super cool. Well, just as a fan of your art, I also have a question about it, because I noticed a number of pictures, and I noticed a number of paintings that have very specific scenes going on. And I sometimes wonder, was this a scene that you kind of snapshotted in a journey of yours, and you're trying to kind of recreate that exact scene, or are you just kind of, oh, I like this color, oh, I like the way that I drew this tree? Like, how does it work for you? Are you creating from memory, or are you kind of improvising on the spot, or is it a combination of both?
Yeah, it's a combination. There's some paintings that are specific experiences, like when I was describing my awakening experience at the beginning. That painting I have of that was like a, very much trying to capture that.
Is there a name on that? I'd love to look at it right now.
Yeah, it's called My Awakening. I don't know, if you go to my website and type in the search bar My Awakening, and it'd probably come up. But it's, it's an older one, and my skills were also lacking at that point, but it's more abstract, but that's what I was experiencing. It was sort of this more abstract realm of pure energy. And then a lot of my forest experiences are a combination of a real experience and then going with the creativity of the moment. And so I am often trying to capture like these metaphysical layers and these metaphysical types of energy that to me in psychedelic experiences appear as these like interconnected geometric patterns that flow from one object to the next, and they're sort of the same pattern. Like it's like the part of a tree that flows into the ground, it's like the pattern's the same, but when it flows into each other, it kind of changes just subtly. And it's, to me, it's like I'm kind of seeing the like coding of the, this other layer of reality, essentially.
Yeah.
And
the higher dimension. I'm looking at Metagrove right now, and all these little geometries or symbols that are kind of like, hexagons, or no, octagons, I should say.
Hexagons.
Oh, it's hexagons. Okay.
Those are hexagons.
And then also like the light shining down with this kind of information encoded in it. I've seen these things on psychedelics, and they're there, and I feel like they're what holds space for the material world. There's an ethereal world that is in between everything, and that's how that's like Alison Gray talks about God as a force, not like a personality. Not like some dude who has thoughts and is like, oh, I want humans to worship me.
Totally.
Instead, it's a force of technology beyond our comprehension. It puts us in awe and wonder, and we have looked to it for as long as humanity has been around for the next steps, or how to find content, a contentness within ourselves, and understand why we're here on Earth. Because a lot of times we don't know, like especially before an awakening, we don't know, why are we here again? To play video games, But this is absolutely incredible work, and I feel like it is tapping into that higher dimension of order that oddly holds space for all the maybe disorder, but also just the material plane,
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. It's sort of, it pulls it together in this, and it recognizes the symbiotic relationship of everything. And one thing I love, like Paul Stamet's, Paul Stamet's the mushroom guy?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So in the film Fantastic Fungi that came out, which I highly recommend to people, he has this speech at the end where he's talking about his vision of us coming from mushrooms and coming from mycelium, and how it's one of the oldest consciousnesses on Earth. And mycelium is sort of like the underground internet of the plants and things. It connects, it has symbiotic relationships with its own self, and then sends information between the roots of the trees and plants. And even trees share these different, all kinds of things in nature have these symbiotic relationships, and we're a part of that. And so I think it's sort of recognizing how interconnected everything is. And like what levels of consciousness, like how does the earth speak to us? Like if trees can speak to each other at a distance when they're being chomped on by a giraffe, and they can send a signal to a tree's like way further away, and apparently call these like bitter ants to climb up the tree, so that when the giraffes go to that tree, it doesn't eat the leaves because the bitter ants are there. Some things along those lines. And there's all kinds of plants that do that to repel insects and things. And it's like, well, what? Wait a second. What is the earth saying to us right now? Or how are we? What happened to our psychic relationship to the earth and all things? Like, where did that go? And how can we cultivate that to understand our symbiotic relationship? And I think it is like these other layers of reality. And that's a big part of what I'm trying to show, are there's these other layers that we don't normally see in our everyday waking reality that are there. And again, it's sort of proof, because so many people like yourself and so many people come to me and say, oh my God, that's like almost exactly what I saw, or that is exactly what I saw. Like, that's how I interpret it, at least, so it's this language. And again, that comes back to building community. So we, as the mycelium, like, we're communicating to each other right now. Again, like how you're doing with your platform, is like, we are building community, and it's like finding these ways of communication. So we're communicating this beauty and these ways of reconnection, and that's where it's at. We're just we're remembering these other layers of intelligence that we have that are inherent in our DNA, and it's like our birthright to be connected to this sort of higher form of intelligence that you might call God, or the Earth's consciousness, or whatever, that seems very apparently within us to reconnect to.
Yes, and it calls us, and I think the signature of its calling is beauty. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like you show up on, with the right setting and with the right plant, you'll see, the most gorgeous, beautiful thing you had no idea you could ever see. To the point that literally after that happened to me, I would return to that place every day. It was like I had to go back. And I'm not saying at all that I had to take psychedelics and go. I'm saying I did take a psychedelic, and I saw this beautiful place. And then for days after, with such reverence for the sacredness of what I had witnessed, I would go back to the spot like it was like, like some type of energy field, or even like a holy site. You know what I mean? And I would just look at the same thing I was seeing the days before, but without psychedelics, but tapping into that higher dimension of beauty. And honestly, that is so much better for your brain than just TV all day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's that appreciation for nature that I think comes when people talk about, oh, I appreciate nature so much more after psychedelics. It's because they're able to see that a little bit more of that higher dimension as to what's going on out there.
Totally, man. And it's like, I think like when you said your brain, I also continually recognize that it's my entire body. And I'm trying to find, like, the Wim Hof breath is really reconnecting me, and Qigong, like these subtle things are reconnecting me to the aliveness of all the cells in my body, and how there is this fully interconnected network of entire like aliveness in my entire body. So like pulling that energy all through my body and reconnecting. And, it's even in like psychedelic experiences for me visually can also have like extreme horror, like extreme horror can appear. And actually almost every deep psychedelic journey I have, there's this period of intense darkness and purgatory. But what I find is that it always is a reminder that I have a choice to pull myself out of that. And when I experience purgatory, sometimes it's like this total just observing, but then sometimes I'm in it and I recognize that my thoughts are a part of it. And so it's this choice to move towards the beauty. So I like that you said that that's sort of a recognize of a calling towards that reconnection of where you want to come to. And it's usually a frequency that resonates with the heart, I find. Like literally you can feel it coming out of your heart or the center of your, that sort of energy center of your body, and it extending into your cells, and then that energy field just goes out into the world.
Right.
And
I agree. And I think it might be a worthy note to say that I think a lot of people don't know what people mean when they say come from the heart. Our typical ego wants to protect us. It tends to think, oh, this might be dangerous. like this person coming at me, I don't know them, they're a stranger. I'm
Yeah.
having thoughts about I shouldn't look at them in the eyes. I should definitely not say hello to them. Like it's like just this kind of like weird paranoid state that society is in versus a more open culture like a festival culture, which is why people like that
Hmm.
because everyone's smiling and looking you directly in the face and, hey, I don't even know you, but you're my family. It's like, I guess what I'm saying is they're coming from the heart in that moment because that judgment is turned off. And it's hard to shut thoughts off. That's why meditation and psychedelics and all these things we're talking about are so helpful in helping people see these deeper ways to view reality and to come from the heart. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry.
No,
No,
go ahead.
sorry. I'm just excited about where you're going.
No,
Yeah,
for sure. It's just
like it's like what I would say is feeling and emotion.
Feeling, yeah.
Is like not blocking out our emotion and not getting stuck in that visionary state, not just the third eye visualization, is that actual feeling state. And my lady Jane, I think she coined the term one time, is like feelualize instead of visualize. Feel how your future reality looks and what that actually feels like and things along those lines. So I think you're talking about emotion and feeling. Is as sort of opposed to thinking. And then when you can combine the two, then you're like, it's really about that harmonious state of being where you're combining, you're finding coherence between your heart and your mind and the greater reality.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally. After certain yoga practices, I feel like I can actually feel this magnetic field emanating from the heart. And that is what I think the ancient, yoga teachers and people who brought this practice to the world would say is a chakra. To us, it's a morphic field. We can look at it more scientifically. It's an electromagnetic field that just surrounds our body the same way it surrounds, like the birds that fly in those crazy formations that, like seemingly are impossible, but like yet it's happening in nature with animals that aren't over there thinking. They're just feeling that field. They're just
totally
flowing through that field. So that's part of what I was saying earlier about being an animal is that, like, yes, we have the potential to think on these higher levels and do science and use microscopes and telescopes and try and understand the deepest parts of reality. I don't think you ever will, personally. I think it's just going to get deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And then there's going to be a quantum times 10 at a point. And it's just like, okay, well, when are you just going to accept that it's infinite and that it's fractal and move on and spend your time doing other things? I don't know. Personally, that's my angle. But,
and exploring that depth too. Yeah.
Exploring it without such a kind of deterministic viewpoint. Because they're like, I'm determined to be the Nobel Prize winner to prove that there's 14 microscopic things you'll never see around another microscopic thing you'll never see.
So
Yeah. I mean, and that's cool. No, like kudos to people. I mean, I know science helps. I know medicine helps. For me, it's so much more interesting to be lost in the infinity and in the wonder. It makes me feel better.
Yeah, I think we're combining them. I think it's that, again, that thing about like religion in many years past had such a hold over people's imaginations, and then science came in and became the new religion, and now it's so dogmatic, but it's falling apart right now. And that's why you have so many people, like for those that have been researching deep on this, you've seen so many scientists, Nobel laureate scientists disagreeing with other Nobel laureate scientists about how a virus even works, like what even is a virus and things along those lines. And because we're talking about all these things that are actually really difficult to measure and they think they have pinned down. But obviously, if there's all these like experts disagreeing, it kind of just shows that, and we know with quantum physics too, that your observations affect your experiment, your science experiment. Right. So you can see what you want to see. And that goes with any information. Right. You can go on the internet now and go down a rabbit hole and prove any point more or less. You can find something to back up your perspectives. So we have all these reality tunnels and So we're just merging them again. I think it's this re-merging of science and spirituality that's happening, and we're just in this sort of dark night of the soul about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really intense.
Yeah. No, it's intense, but it is an amazing time to be alive, I'll say. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Simon. Man, this has been
Thank
super
you.
cool. And
Yeah.
where can people find your work and also your music?
Yeah, so if you go to artbysimon.com, that's my website. My name is Simon Haiduk, so you can go to simonhaiduk.com or artbysimon.com. And then my Facebook and Instagram are at Simon Haiduk Art.
Love it. And for your music?
Yeah, it's all on my website.
Okay, great. So you have two projects, right? You're a solo producer, but also you're in a band, Heofon.
Yeah, my band Heofon. So yeah, if you go to heofon.com, that's HEOFON. But I also have that on my website under the music tab. So it's all there, all my ambient music and my other projects. And I have some new stuff coming soon. And all my art and animations. And it's all there on my website.
Wonderful. Yeah, and I just want to give you, mega props on your music, man, because both the band and the ambient projects I've listened to just endless times, and man, you're really hitting the spot. You're really doing some awesome stuff.
Thanks so much, Matt, and props to you for all that you're doing. It's so incredible how many people you're supporting through your platform there. It's just incredible. I love it. I love you sharing. It's great, man. You're connecting. You're doing the community connection, and you're not, I can tell you're like a humble person that's not trying to be this fame demon-y guru person. You're just like, I want to connect people. I'm going to share. Like, what an amazing place to come from, like sharing art. That's something I love doing on my Facebook and Instagram too. It's like sharing is caring, like let's share and support each other. So you're doing a great job there. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Simon. Wonderful chat.
Yeah.
That is Simon Haiduk, everyone. Go find his stuff, find his work, buy some paintings, listen to music, support the art. Thanks for being with us today, and we look forward to seeing you again in the future.